Will Lucas here, Black Tech, Green Money, having a conversation with one of my favorite people in technology, Fonz Morris, Alfonso Morris, who's a lead product designer at Netflix, one of the biggest companies on the planet. We talk about everything from being self-taught as a designer to how to land a job as a designer to even being internationally known and traveling all around the world. Enjoy the conversation. So you are a self-taught designer, and I'm interested in your take on today. You know, just several years ago, we were, just talking about how you needed to go to school. Companies required it because it was part of their filtering process. These days, maybe not so much. I want you to speak on that. But being in product design, how do you show, or number one, can you do it being self-taught? And secondarily, how do you show that you've got the chops to do it?
So, yes, you can definitely see, the thing is, we have to be more specific about the type of industry that we're talking about or the specific company, because it's not fair to just say Google or Netflix. I know those are the FANG companies, so that could be big tech, you want to say, right? But when you think of all of the different places that are looking for product designers or are now adapting design thinking, have now given design a seat at the table, there's millions of companies that you're just never going to think of, right? So yes, you can definitely get an amazing job, a design job at any stage of a company's life cycle. I can say you can go from being an entrepreneur and creating your own company to working at a startup to working at a Series B or C, D company that's worth hundreds of millions, or you can work with an IPO company, and all of them will hire a self-taught designer because it's more about the experience that you have. So if you are able to use your self-taught skills to then get opportunities and get experiences, to answer your second question, to show the skills that you have, that's how you get the job. The other names and stuff go with it. So if you tell somebody you worked at Meta, they're going to think you had a higher quality of experience. So that's why they're interested in you. Yes, the Meta part is important, but what is the real importance is they think you have a certain skill set. So you need to be able to demonstrate that you have that skill set, and that's through your experiences. So that's why you get a job and have a resume and have a LinkedIn page that shows where have you worked, what have you done, what skills do you have, and now the company decides, does your skill set match the problem solving that they need done?
Yeah, let's dig into that because when you use the word skills a couple of times, I want to make sure people know what you're actually talking about. So, because there's a difference between being like a Figma beast, like you can just run circles inside Figma or Adobe, or and the difference between that and being just a person who develops really beautiful products. And so, can you talk about when you say skills? I can show the skills that I have. What do you define that for me?
So the skills would be defined by the individual of where they say their strengths are or where they want to pursue their career in. When you think of a product's life cycle, there's different phases, and those different phases require different skills. So if you are a visual person, you may want to focus on the visual design, which may be UI, which would be almost like a couple steps into the process, as opposed to per se, I'm a product designer and I'm trying to help ideate the idea and come up with it from the beginning. So my skills might be more, I just like an innovative thinker. Like I'm good at brainstorming. I'm good at coming up with 0 to 1 ideas. So that might be the skills that I'm saying I have as a product designer, where a visual designer might say what you just said of, I'm really good in Figma. I've done a bunch of UI. I can really take wireframes and bring them to life and make them exciting and make users want to interact with them. So that would be the skills of that person, where if you were a UX researcher, you really can come up with deep understand, you know how to interact with your users to get their insights from them about different products that you may be working on or different questions you have. So you have research skills. So it's all about, what do you want to work on? What brings you joy? What brings you passion? What excites you? And then now the skills for that specific industry or domain will be different and will be unique, and there'll be overlap and things like that. But man, the bucket of skills is endless.
And so when you are today leading product design, particularly for conversion at Netflix, and in my view, I mean, maybe this is me translating it for myself, but you're designing for sales. You're designing to keep people on the site. You're designing to keep people going down the rabbit hole in Netflix. So I'm gonna let you translate it for your own. I'm gonna let you define that. But when we think about product design, when I listen to you talk, and I've listened to other interviews you've had, we've been friends for a while, and I listened to your other interview, and I'm like, this guy is a man that thinks about data. And I saw this quote I want to bring up. I don't even know if you remember saying this, but you said, at this stage of my career, I don't like to guess. I don't like to assume either. The data doesn't dictate the design, but helps support and give direction for it. So can you take those things I just mentioned there and just talk more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So the second part I love to speak on, because when you're working with a user base that's as large as Netflix is, we have about 260 million subscribers. You really, any decisions you make are going to affect a large amount of people. Now, even if you do a small test for us might be 2 million people. That's still 2 million people. If we do like a multi large user based test, that could be 50, 60 million people. You really
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be guessing when you're affecting that many people. And if you have the resources and you have the data, now you use that data to help figure out the do's and don'ts of solving this problem. Where if you're just guessing, you might make the wrong decision. Where when you have the data might tell you you shouldn't even be worrying about that part of this problem. Like, that's not where the problem is, or this is where you should be focused more on. So that will fluctuate depending on the problem you're solving. But that's where I'm coming from. Of, I still have to come up with the solution for it, but my solution is a lot more educated. So my chances of success is a lot higher because I have the data to back it up. So that's where I'm coming from. Of right now, I'm less about, oh, did Fonz make the right decision? I'm more focused on, is this the best decision for our user? And now, what are all of the different things I need to do to make sure that that's the best decision? So it's almost as my career has grown, I've kind of taken myself out of being the person that I'm designing for, trying to make happy, and I'm really focused on the user. So I'm very user centric with my design and my career. I think now and forever moving forward. I always was user centric, but there still was so much that I was focusing in and trying to just prove to myself that I was a designer. Where now I'm more getting the job done, and to get that done, it takes a lot. Like, it takes a lot of cross collaboration. It takes a lot of understanding of multiple domains at once, and it takes you being able to really know how to use the data to make the best decisions.
You just said something that I thought was interesting. You just said, I was trying to prove to myself that I was a designer. You know,
Mhm.
say more about that if you can.
Yeah, sure. I think when anybody's getting started in a career, you're trying to build that confidence up, and you're probably comparing yourself to people who you look up to, who have more experience than you, and you want to be in their shoes one day. So it's easy for you to kind of, and I don't like this term, but it's true, to kind of develop imposter syndrome. I don't think it's imposter, because imposter is me trying to perform surgery on somebody. I have no right to even think about doing anything in medicine. But a lot of things design related. I mean, I might not be an expert in that, but I think I have the right to stand up. I know what I'm talking about. So it's not that you're an imposter, it's just the responsibilities and the expectations. It be so high sometimes that you don't feel like you might be able to get it done. And you're constantly reassuring yourself through different projects that you work on. And we're only human and we're sensitive, and I think we forget about that part when we're building product and we're building tech. It's like we forget about the humanity side of it, and that's always there. It's the foundation of it. So when you're growing your career, and as you move to new jobs and with more responsibilities, you're constantly trying to prove to yourself that, yo, you can do this, and you're good enough, and you earn to be here. And then depending on what other societal things you may have going on, like are you a female versus a male? Like, are you from an underrepresented community? Like, where'd you go to school? All of those different things play a part when you're working in this like ecosystem. So at certain times, you might find yourself, I think, not necessarily designing for the wrong reasons because you should make yourself happy, but you start to lose focus of what you should really be focused on. And that's why I said I'm user centered now, as opposed to just like, what does Fonz think? And do I think this looks great? Sometimes the designs that we end up shipping aren't the ones that I think are the best designs, but it didn't matter because the data proved that this other design was more efficient. So that's what we went with.
Yeah. So in that same interview where I got that quote, you were talking about the data, and you were talking about how, hey, people, somebody says, people in Korea are canceling, and then so now you're gonna go dig into the data to figure out, okay, is that really true? Number one. And then why? And you said something I thought was so interesting. You were like, at some level, you've got to talk to them, talk to the customers, and say, okay, why are you canceling? And I'm like, but he's at Netflix. And I remember this quote from Paul Graham, who said, do things that don't scale. Doing things that don't scale, that's how you get to scale. And I'm like, even at Netflix, you are doing things like you can't pick up the phone and call 1 million people. You can't pick up the phone and call 50 million. But you're talking still to customers even at that big of a stage.
Yeah, you have to talk to customers. I mean, I think that's one of the favorite parts of my job. Honestly, we just had some calls that we had to really work hard to ramp up to get done because the time frame of the window that we had to actually do the calls, and calls are qualitative research. So qualitative is when you're like physically talking to somebody, you're working with an individual versus like a focus group, versus quantitative could just be surveys. So we could do a quantitative survey and send that out to millions of people. And now you're at the mercy of whoever opens it and spam, but you're going to get a huge group of people, right? So quantitative is super valuable. But then qualitative is super valuable because that's me sitting down with you now and me being able to show you and say, hey, Will, what's your thoughts about this? And then you say XYZ, and then I show you something else, and you give this and you give that. So now I've already come up with an idea that I think I have, but I'm not just relying on me validating it. I'm making sure that it actually has value for the people who I thought I'm solving this for. So by showing this to you, I can now hear from you, and you might give me a completely different set of feedback that is opposite of what I thought. And it's better for me to hear that feedback from you now and improve the idea or scrap the idea. Now I'll make the decision on how much of your input I want to take. But now when you start thinking of, depending on the size of the research, if you do research of 15 people and all 15 people don't understand what's going on, that's a sign that most people are probably not going to know what's going on. So you can now take that information, take that data, once again, go back to the drawing board, make some edits, go maybe test one more time. And now that second time around, you might see 12 people understand it. So the first go, 0 understood it. You took the learnings from that, fixed it, went back, 12 people understand it. Now you probably got a better chance of more people will understand that. And you figure out what's the next step of like testing and things like that. So you tie the user research into experimentation. And I think it just really allows you to build a way better product before it gets to market. And the last thing I'll say is the reason why that is important when you have a brand that is IPO, meaning they're trading on the stock market, their stock price can be very volatile and tied to public perception and current brand state. So if you roll out something bad that all of your users jump on Twitter, X, Instagram, and they're talking smack, and now the market hears about that, that could negatively affect your stock price, which negatively affects your stakeholders and your shareholders. And it gets all bad. So you want to really avoid that when you really are when the basis of your company is a product, like Netflix is a product. So it would be in our best interest to make sure all of our products are at the highest quality every time we roll them out, and there are no snafus or hiccups, because that backtracking of that feature or that negative sentiment in the market could really affect us as a company. So not to be long-winded, but that's why you have to do all of that, because at the end of the day, we're trying to make sure you all are happy. And when you're not happy, everybody suffers. You meaning the customer.
Yeah, and there's something I've heard you say several times, and not just this interview, but in others, where you said, at Netflix, like, you have a lot of resources, you have a lot of things you can pull from to be able to do things at a big scale, small scale. You get to pick big scale, small scale, whatever. And so when you talked about doing that research, qualitative research, what I find is with a lot of founders, and you mentioned this word, so I'll bring it back up. We're sensitive, and so there's sometimes you can be inauthentic with your questions to people, customers, potential users, because you want to structure the question in a way to get the answer you want them to give you, right?
That's
And so understanding what's sensitive, understanding a lot of people who listen to this will be founders, will be entrepreneurs who are trying to get, to the FANG level, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, and there's others now, NVIDIA even. When you try, NVIDIA, incredible. So how do you ensure you're being authentic in that qualitative research, especially when you're just trying, there's this whole other thing of, if you're not embarrassed by your first release, you've released too late, because you could do so much research, so much design, so much, etc. And now you just spend a whole bunch of money, a whole bunch of resources on something that nobody even wants to use in the first place.
Right, which is the worst case scenario. And I think that's what a lot of founders or companies end up doing. So you don't want to waste your time working on things that really won't solve the problem that like you're looking for, or that the customer is like looking for. So you want to make sure that you're always talking to your customers to really understand, like, what are the problems that, damn, like, I forgot the question. I was about to give you some magic and then I forgot the question.
Yeah, so it's about being authentic, because you can.
Oh, I got it.
Okay,
I got
cool.
it.
Okay.
So asking questions that don't solve the problems that the company needs is a complete waste of time, to be honest with you. Like, that's the most blunt way I can put it. To go through the motions of scheduling a research, the finances, the time, the expense, like all of that stuff that it takes to do research, to only ask questions to tailor them in a way for you to get answers that you want, is like, that's just unprofessional. It's a waste of time. It's not going to really help you get anything done. Where this is a shout out to my UX researchers at Netflix. We grill, like, they come up with questions, we suggest questions, we grill each other on the questions of, like, that question is just not going to get us the, like, what you think we're going to get from that question is not really going to help us as much as you think it is. Like, I've had my UX researcher tell me that many times, and she wasn't trying to front on me or call me out or nothing. She's just helping me think about what do you need from every question that you're asking. And do you really need a vanity question? Like, I tell you that I like your shirt, Will. I mean, it feels good, but do you really need that question?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. So it's like,
no, you don't like my shirt. No, you don't like my shirt. Oh.
I like your shirt, but do you really need me to tell you that? It's like, you know it's a nice shirt. You just want to hear me tell you it's a nice shirt. Fine. There's other stuff I could probably tell you, but if you want to hear that. So, like, think about a UX research like that. That's a very important time for you to interact with your user or interact with your potential user and really understand and make that connection, possibly bond with them to really learn some critical information. So to waste that time would just be like sad. It would be sad, and it's going to have an impact where it's going to have a negative impact, where if you had asked them the right questions, it could have like such a positive impact, because now you can really say, okay, I've shared this product with X users and this was their feedback. And if the feedback is not what you wanted to hear, so what? You now use that feedback and you build on it and you make the product better. And if it is what you want to hear, then you're like, great, we got some stuff validated in this research. And now that gives a green light to do XYZ. So either way, the UX research is so important, and talking to users is almost, if I'm a part of any company, if I'm talking to any founders, if any of my peoples have questions, I'm just always pushing for research, no matter how many resources you have to bring this all the way back. If you can only do research with 5 people, that's better than zero. If you can do research with 50 million, like we can in Netflix, that's fantastic as well. But just remember that the research is super, super important.
If you're relearning or learning for the first time product design today, knowing the tools that are available to you today versus what was available when you were teaching yourself then, what would you be doing, or what do you advise people to do that's relevant? What are the tools that are relevant today to learning, those methods of learning?
I don't even think I would tell you to jump into tools. I think tools is more like second, where first I would tell people to focus more on what kind of problems do you want to solve first. Like, that's the first question. That's like such a basic foundational question that I don't think a lot of people probably have asked themselves in the last couple of years. So first ask yourself that, right? Because that's going to open up the doors of, if you just pick a software, you may be able to use that software, but that software may not be mandatory, or it may not get you where you want to go. As opposed to, if you have if you have an understanding of the problem you want to solve, now you'll say, okay, well, this is means I'm going to be a product designer versus a product manager. And if you want to be a product manager, do you really need to know Figma? It's okay that you can bounce around in it, but that's not where you're going to spend most of your time. You're probably going to spend most of your time in Google Docs or Google Slides. You know what I mean? So having more of that understanding of what problems you want to solve, where you want to go, what you're passionate about, I think then the tools will start to move towards that. You'll see where, like I gave the example of, product manager might be more Google Suite stuff, product designer might be more Figma, UI engineer might be a little bit of Figma and JavaScript. So you start to, if you data science, you might just be in some custom tools that you have, or you may just be looking at reports all day. So I don't think it's a specific tool that I would tell somebody to go to. I would tell them that tool will make itself apparent after you understand either what problem or what industry or what users you want to be solving problems for. Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Makes total sense. And so, if anybody follows you, and I know this well, like if anybody follows you on any social, they realize you stay on the PJ, you are out here, you're really well traveled, passport heavy.
Yeah, I do love travel.
And so, Europe, South America, Central America, South Asia, all over the place. And I wonder, can you be a successful designer with a local, like having not traveled, especially for somebody like a Netflix?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But remember, everything is relative, Will. Like, everything is relative. Like, do you want to work? Some people don't want to work at a big organization like Netflix. Some people like a smaller org, or some people want to be an entrepreneur. So I think it's up to, once again, us to help people understand that you need to do that kind of foundational self-awareness work, and then that will be the pathway to everything else. And then you'll be able to say, because like a person who's in, per se, like the Philippines, maybe they want to work at Netflix, maybe they don't. So instead of like just gauging it by the company, it's more of, what does this impact that you want to give look like? Are you putting out great work where you're getting replies from your users of you're solving problems and they're happy to use your product? You can do that at a lot of companies. You don't have to just be at a big fame company to do that. So by having that like self-understanding, I think you can thrive as a designer anywhere, in any continent, any country, any city, honestly.
Yeah, so did you make me bring up an AI question on this, because AI is an incredible conversation to be having today. You have to have this conversation at every level of any type of technology discussion, or even just life discussion these days. Um, do you consider being better travel or more having a bigger worldview, I should say, maybe not even just travel, but a bigger worldview allows you to be um, more valuable, more of an asset specific to design? Because if I only have a modicum of skill, a little bit of skills, there are things coming for that. And so, how do I make myself more valuable to an organization because my perspective is better? That's where that question comes from.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I would honestly say that the traveling, I think, is a passion of mine. And I found a way to tie that passion into my professional life through public speaking. And that's how I continue to do that. I do think I grow as a person by traveling because I learn more about cultures, I see more things, I'm exposed to more. So I think at the end of the day, that helps me grow as Fonz, and me growing as Fonz allows me to be a better designer. I think that you don't have to travel to become a great designer. I think the traveling does also help with your network, though. And I think networking is part of being a designer. So I think it's more about what are you looking for at that moment. I think traveling is important because I think being open minded and learning and seeing and experiences is one of the best parts of life. You know what I mean? But I think there's a lot of traveling that you can do just in the States that a lot of people don't do. I still haven't been to the Grand Canyon, you know what I mean? And like that's one of the wonders of the world. I still haven't been to Seattle. There's so many things I still haven't done. So I think the international travel is a pleasure of mine. It's like a passion of mine. I've been traveling since I was a kid. But I think that the designers nowadays, whether you're trying to get started or whether you're a senior designer, the travel will just be an extra part of it. Like I don't think it really is even slightly mandatory.
You've spoken at many conferences, and you just talked about your speaking career, which is, I'm assuming parallel to your just, corporate career. You've spoken at AfroTech and other stages, big stages.
Shout out to
Yeah,
AfroTech.
shout out to AfroTech, of
Man,
course.
hold on a second. Shout out. They gave, yo, honestly, part of the like to tie back into the first question that you asked me, a lot of the reason that I'm so proactive in the community is because of the doors that Afrotech opened.
Right.
Afrotech gave me a shot when I was like a young homie. I was just getting started out there in the Bay Area with speaking, but that was such a big stage in front of so many people. And it's such a credible organization that after that experience, it's just like I haven't looked back. And that was literally 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, and you've done beautiful work since then. So I want to ask you about that. Like, how do you choose what you're going to speak about when you hit those stages?
So I'm in a position where I'm fortunate enough where they ask me what do I want to speak about
Mm-hmm.
usually.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different topics that I like to discuss depending on who the audience would be or maybe what the theme of the conference is about. And that's how I gauge. For instance, when I went to Japan, I did a full day workshop about inclusive design. When I went to Tbilisi, Georgia recently, I did a talk that was more about business design. Um, I've done conversations that's more just about inclusion in itself or accessibility. So I think it's more gauged around like I'm so well versed in different things because I love this stuff that I have the luxury at times to pick different topics. It's always under designed to a certain extent, but it's never the exact same talk or the exact same slides or the exact same topic.
And so, I mean, you know this better than most. Like, getting promoted and getting to your level has maybe more to do with how you navigate spaces and your skill. It's not just about having the skill. There's politics
Right.
involved. And so
A lot.
how do you can you discuss that, and what can we learn from your story and how you've managed to do both well, be very good at what you do and manage the politics of what you do?
That's a really good question. I think you should probably save that one and ask everybody that one. I would say, man, I'm just me. I'm just Fonz, like I tell people that all the time. This sounds cliche, but I really try my best to be my authentic self. I don't like when I'm not being my authentic self. Like I don't like when I'm switching or changing up or thinking else, none of that, because that's not me. Like I'm where I am because of who I am. So I spend a lot of time working on my self confidence because you really need that self confidence to fight these battles every single day. Like it's hard out here. So definitely take the time to, and then that self confidence comes in a lot of different ways. It's not just, oh, you're confident because people tell you, because people give you compliments all the time. Maybe you're confident because inside you put your X amount of time into this, so you're good. You know what I mean? But having that type of of understanding is really important because there's going to be times where this journey is going to test you, and when you get tested is where you now have to decide what are you going to do. And the more confident you are, the greater your chances are probably succeeding through those tough times, because you're probably going to be able to still muster up that energy, still muster up that faith. You still have that belief in yourself that you can get this done, as opposed to per se bowing down. And being a nice person goes a long way. And I don't think a lot of people understand that anymore. So, and being very humble, I'm a very humble dude. I'm still down to earth, man. My feelings still get hurt. I still blush when somebody tells me something really positive about it. So all of that to say is just like, remember that it's about the journey. You know what I'm saying? So make the journey as fun as possible, learn as much as you can, meet as many people, help as many people as you can. You know what I mean? Take as many risks as you can. Like do all of that. That's all of the part of the journey. Like you want to be able to look back on your career and feel like, man, I left it out there. Like I left it all on the court. Like I gave them boys 5,000%. That's how I want to look at things. So I make sure like I'm doing that. And now there's different ways that I do that. And that's like I do a lot of mentoring with up and coming designers. Now more people reach out to me than I can meet with, but the like 10, 20, 50 people I might meet with a year, that still makes me feel good. You know what I mean? So knowing that I'm out there just giving it all I got. And I think that's what everybody should always strive to do. Like leave it all out there every day. And that will be enough. Because when you look back, you'll just be like, yo, I did the best I could do. I did the best I could do.
Yeah.
And that feels good. Like it feels good to say that.
Fonz, it's a blessing to be with you, man. It's always an honor.
Yeah, for sure. Big Will, the homie.
Oh man.
Thank you, man. I'm honored to be on here, man. And shout out to you for always supporting me, man. It's been, like I said, it's been about like 5 years that we've known each other, and that we've been working, and you always continue to look out. So I want you to know I'm very thankful and appreciative.
Oh man, you're a constant inspiration, my man.